Hey, what's up, family? King Isom in the building. I hope all is well. As you all know, those who follow me, I do different series of instruction, usually about 30 to 40 minutes long. And of course, I'll continue to do that. But I want to start putting out more content in more short, succinct clips and just chiming in on different random topics. And so I haven't figured out yet what I want to call this particular playlist. But often on Facebook, when I do post, I often start with, I feel like sharing. And so that's kind of the vein I want to flow in with these short clips. So for right now, I'm just sharing. Okay, with that said, King Isom's at your service. I'm ready to teach. Prince Isom is in your seat, ready to learn. And what I want to learn from, hopefully today, and maybe share from, it's a clip from the lead attorney. And there are a couple of things I want to highlight as we're talking about this clip. So I'm going to let them flow. And of course, I'll chime in as they do so.
And I have represented tons of men, tons of women over 20 years, and I have seen the destruction that takes place. Like, no one has seen more men break down in tears while their kids get taken away, the equity in their home gets stolen, their retirement, their pension gets stolen by these judges.
And I want to stop there. That's something that I'm hoping to highlight in my series entitled Managing Your Manhood, about how men have to protect themselves, especially in these marriages, beloved. And I'm going to share some things in that particular focal point to kind of give you, brother, some guidance here. And it may shock some of you, especially coming from me, a man who's a man of God who preaches from the Bible. You may be a little bit surprised in my perspectives as it relates to marriage in modern day America. But I digress. He's making some great points here as he's seen over the 20 years of his experience, men getting slaughtered and brutalized in these family court systems. But let's move on. I want you to watch the response of this woman as he's trying to share.
They have so much to lose. Women don't have these things to lose.
Yeah, we do. How can you say that a woman doesn't have equity in a house to
I can say that because I've been practicing for 20 years.
But I know, but women also can make money. Like, there could be marriages where the woman makes more money.
I want you to hear what she just said there and hear his response. Run it back a little bit. He was talking just common sense and saying that men in general, they have so much more to lose. The woman chimed in and said, how can you say that? And I loved his response. He said, I can say that from 20 years as an attorney, I'm assuming in the family court system. So he's not only studied that particular area, I'm assuming, he's practiced that particular area for 20 years. And so, I don't mind her saying, how can you say that? But when he responded with his answer, that should have been the end of it. But look at the mind of what I call the TMW, typical modern woman. I'm not going to linger here long, but look at it.
Don't have these things to lose.
Yeah, we do. Can you say that a woman doesn't have equity in a house to
I can say that because I've been practicing for 20 years.
But I know, but women also can make money. Like, there could be marriages where the woman makes more money.
I want you to notice, and I'm enjoying this, folks. I'm just free flowing. I've only watched this clip a couple of times before I talk to you, and I'm just sharing. But I want you to notice the demeanor. There's so much we can learn because Prince Isom is in your seat, ready to learn. I want you to notice the demeanor of the lead attorney as he's engaging this woman and the entire panel. Very relaxed, even though, I'm sure, hearing her talk is frustrating. But he's very relaxed and very calm. Hear me, beloved. That comes from experience, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. It's very important, especially as men, that we are well read. Not gonna go on a tangent here, but beloved, I'm much the same way. When you know what you're talking about, and more importantly, when you know the nature of who you're talking to, especially when you engage in these different panels, different demographics, these women, regardless of who you're talking to, when you know your content and when you know your audience and when you know who and how you're engaging with, It brings a sense of calm because you see their arguments coming. You see their way of thinking. You are well versed in it. So it's very important that we as men, we mature and grow in our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. It brings peace to your life, even in what appears to be frustrating situations and frustrating, engagements, if you will, with these knuckleheads. Let's listen to one right now.
Listen, there
And
are the LeBron James of women, all right? But I'm not talking about these special cases. I'm
yeah.
talking about in general.
There you go. I like how I clarified that. There are some exceptions, but when you're having any kind of discussion of merit, uh, of course, you have to use the norms. And so, in inserting exceptions, that's a typical trait of a typical modern woman. They like to insert the exceptions. And that's just a way to deflect oftentimes and cause chaos and confusion. But I like how he said, no, he clarified the exception is there, but we're talking about the general. But let's move on.
If you want to sit here and tell me that women in general lose their kids, you're crazy.
No, but
Of course they don't.
Look at her face right here. Now, she's not looking at anyone. What she's doing is she's looking into the recesses of her mind. And as she is looking, she is finding what many will find who think and function and flow like her. There's not much there. I'm just having a little fun, man. We love the women now. But she's trying to argue. And this is something you have to be careful of because I'm not even sure she's aware. You notice now with the lead attorney, he never broke eye contact with her. Why? Because he is flowing in the stream of logic and what I would call common sense. There's no need to look around like she's doing, trying to gather your thoughts. But when you're dealing with someone who wants to argue the exception in the face of the norm, you'd be amazed at the lengths they will go to defy logic. And you, especially as men, you have to understand how to engage in that and how to refrain. Look at her trying to gather her thoughts with so little to gather from.
it's well, some women do if they're like alcohol
No,
abusers or
not in
something.
general.
Now, this is the point I want to hone in on here. Okay, let's go back a little bit, and I'm going to do a series, I believe. I'm going to try to get to it, man. I keep talking about what I'm going to do. And time, brothers, time. Pray for me. But I want to do a series on this one particular word that he says here in response to her. It's a word that we as men and also women as well, we need to learn how to employ when dealing with various people and situations. I'm going to see if the word jumps out to you like it jumped out to me.
Of course they don't.
It's well, some women do if they're like alcohol
No.
abusers.
Did you hear that? Folks, there, ooh, I feel this. Let me get ready to wrap this up, man. There is so much power in the word that brother just said. He said no. No. Folks, there are so many people who would be alive today if they would exercise the power of a no. There are so many people who would be up and about instead of lying on their back in a hospital or a rehab facility or with a bag attached to their side to poop in if they had just learned the power and exercised the power of a no. I'm going to talk about that, beloved. But let me get to one of my other points here that I want to introduce, and then I'm going to wrap this up. Let's listen to her again. That brother said
Some women do
no.
if they're like alcohol
No,
abusers or
not in
something.
general.
I think what you're saying, there's exceptions and there are rules.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know if
There-
Madison was intentionally being disagreeable, respect. Define disagreeable for women.
And I want to stop right here. He was trying to having some fun. I think they were talking about, before this lady chimed in, about being disagreeable. And I think the host here, the guy on the left, he was, trying to make a little fun and trying to transition. Smart of him to do so. And he asked the lead attorney to begin to define what disagreeable means. So I don't want to go there, but I want to, in closing here, I'm about to shut this down. I want to keep it around about 10 minutes here, but I want to make a point that I want to begin to talk about freely. Look at the panel right here. And again, this is something I'm kind of working out in my mind as I am deciding how I want to move. That's something I want to talk to especially men about, managing your movement, moving how you want to move and deciding how you want to move, who you want to move with, how you want to engage, who you want to engage with. And again, I'm closing here, and I'm going to pick this up in my next sharing session. Because again, I'm just sharing from the thoughts, sharing my thoughts freely. I am getting to a point as a so-called Black man. And again, my thoughts are evolving. I'm making decisions on how I want to move. But just for your consideration, I'm getting to the point where I am becoming a much more selective in the image and archetype that I want to listen to. And I'm going to start this point here and pick it up on our next sharing session. But as you look at the panel, and there's some nuance involved, so just let me introduce it and let me work out my thoughts publicly, and hopefully you can learn from that process. I look at the lead attorney, so-called Black man. He's surrounded by, these so-called, white people. And on right beside him is this one content creator who's really getting famous now. Her name is, I believe, or her pseudonym is Just Pearly Things, I believe. And the guy on the far left, I've seen him before, not sure who he is. And the gentleman in the middle, I've seen him before. I think I've seen the girl who he was engaging with as well. But here's the point I want to make in closing. And I'm going to come back and revisit this. I'm getting to the point as a so-called Black man where I want to hear and see my image and archetype teaching me. Let me say it again. I'm getting to the point as a so-called Black man where I want to hear my image and my archetype instructing me as it pertains to life, as it pertains to relationships, as it pertains to spirituality in the Bible. For years, and I'm working out my thoughts here. For years, we have seen the so-called Caucasian archetype has been set over us, especially in America, as our chief teacher, as the chief image and archetype of instruction. And we as a people, we've allowed that. And I'm going to really begin to expand on this, but I'm getting to the point now, or I've got to the point, I'm not trying to hear that right now. And it's not a race issue. It's me as a man deciding how I want to move. My boy sent me, a content creator, a Caucasian woman. And he was like, hey, man, check this girl out, man. She's keeping it real, because a lot of women now, they see the men have woken up. And so they're trying to jump now and support the manosphere, as they call it, etc. But it was a Caucasian woman talking about, making good sense. And my boy was like, yeah, man, check her out, man. She's talking some good sense for a woman. And you know what? As I looked at her, she was saying some good things. But I'm like, you know what? I don't want to hear it from you. I don't want to hear a Caucasian woman trying to tell me about relationships and social issues and how I, as a so-called Black man, should move. And it wasn't something that, I decided. I was just uneasy as I heard her. And me being a king who's ready to teach, but also a prince who's ready to learn, I'm very self-analytical. So I asked myself, well, King, why is it that you don't really want to hear good information from this particular image and archetype? It's the same thing with Just Pearly Things. I've watched some of her clips before, and I see her go back and forth, and it's usually with people of color on her panel. And I'm like, And as I would watch her, and it's obvious to me, this is just me sharing again. I'm just sharing off the head right here, no script. Well, I never have a script, but I'm just sharing. And I watched her. It's obvious she's watched and learned from Kevin Samuels. It's obvious she's watched and studied the manosphere. The woman is a follower by nature. I expect her to do that. And now she's coming out really saying the same things. And she's going back and forth, like I said, usually with so-called black women. I guess they're in England or wherever they're coming from over. I don't know where they're coming from, but it's usually people of color, I noticed. And as I watched her, I'm like, she's not sharing anything different to me. I've heard it before from the brothers, but I said, I just didn't really want to hear from her. And I asked myself, well, what is that? I mean, why don't you want to hear that, brother? She's sharing some good stuff as well. Well, number one, I'm not really keen on hearing from a lot of women, period. And it's not that I don't necessarily want to. They don't resonate with me when they're teaching me about life. And let me distinguish that. I'm not talking about teaching me about finance, about programming or IT or construction, teaching me about an expertise or a particular skill. I can hear from anybody concerned. I don't care what color you are. I'm talking about as it relates to my living, culture, values, the Bible. I'm to a point now, I don't really want to hear from Caucasians in that seat of instruction. And the reason why is, especially in this country, that's all we've had set before us. I'm not talking about an individual. And anybody who knows me knows I got love for all races, if you will, and colors of people. I've demonstrated that love. It comes natural to me. This is not about how much I love somebody. It's not about me being racist or any of those little tropes and stereotypes and deflections that rise up when you address what can be some uncomfortable topics. This is about me as a man, managing how I move. And I move how I want to move, beloved, and the way I want to move now, especially as I'm learning the truth about race and the secret war on black people, especially as I'm learning the truth about the Word of God and learning the language of Scripture. For far too long in America, the image and archetype of the Caucasian man, first and foremost, and the Caucasian woman has been the primary image and archetype of instruction that's always been set over us to be our taskmasters, if you will. Even when it's something that we create, even when voices as strong as Brother Kevin Samuels, RIP, to the late Godfather, even as so-called black men begin to rise up and speak, here comes the Caucasian, and hear me now. They got their own. I've listened to different Caucasian males in the quote unquote manosphere. They doing their thing. And they do it with anybody, But I'm talking about this particular segment that I'm seeing now where they will attach themselves to us. And then before you know it, they're over us. I'm talking about people like, what's the guy, the hip hop guy, Vlad, a Caucasian Jewish man. Everybody runs to him. I'm talking about that other guy. I'm not a hip hop guy at all, but some other guy, Rich something, Caucasian dude. It's like, it's always some Caucasian. It's always the image and archetype of a so-called white person that's trying to occupy the seat of instruction. I'm not trying to hear that right now. Again, I'm not talking about the seat of instruction, because you have to explain things for those who don't listen well, because many of us struggle with listening comprehension. And we're triggered by so many things. I'm not talking about teaching me on the job, expertise. Those are natural, practical things. I don't care if it's a bot teaching me. Give me the information. And I'm not saying that so-called white people don't have insight and understanding. What I'm saying, King Isom, who's at your service ready to teach, what I'm saying, Prince Isom, who's in your seat ready to learn, is I'm at a place in my life, I want to see my image and archetype instructing me. So no disrespect, to just pearly things. I'm not trying to hear you. I don't want you to be the image and archetype instructing me. If I'm going to hear a woman talk about being feminine, I want a so-called black woman. At least a brown woman. I want somebody that looks like me. instructing me. I'm not trying to hear just pearly things talk about the pearly whites or talk about womanhood. Because quite frankly, not her. Again, I keep saying the image and archetype. Nothing against her. She seems sincere, has some great content from what I can hear. But I'm not trying to hear that image and archetype deliver the content. Because you see, hear me, it's the image and archetype of the so-called white woman with her feminist movement that pulled our so-called black women into the state of despair that they're in today because they were foolish enough to follow her. It's the image and archetype of the so-called white man through Christianity by way of through Roman Catholicism, by way of Christianity, that have taught us wrongly about the Bible, that have created this Caucasian image of Christ when he was a so-called black man, that has painted their image and likeness in the Bible when Moses, the prophets, Abraham, the children of Israel were so-called black people. And they've given us this false understanding of the Bible from a Caucasian image and archetype. And I'm sorry, beloved, I'm in a place right now where I'm conquering my kingship. I'm not trying to hear that. And so if my boy sent me that so-called white woman, I'm going longer than I mean. I'm just sharing right now, but I'm going longer than I plan to go. But I feel good. And I'm at a point, and I'm going to elaborate on this. When I look at this panel and I see the lead attorney, and I'm not knocking him from going there, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't go on a panel with so-called white people. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not talking about sharing a platform. I'm talking about who I'm allowing to sit in the seat of instruction to lead me. I'm at a point right now, and this may change. I'm just sharing my thoughts right now. I'm not trying to hear just pearly things. I need a so-called black woman who is functioning in her femininity. I want to see you up there in that seat. I want to hear from you. I want to see a so-called black man like the lead attorney, Kevin Samuels and other brothers. I want to hear from you. You understand? I want to see us teach us. I'm tired of the image and archetype of the Caucasian always trying to come in among us and occupy the seat of instruction among us. That's where I'm at right now. So I don't listen to just pearly things. Nothing against her. And nothing against those who want to, listen to her. I'm just sharing my perspective. This brother, this Caucasian brother on the left over here in the middle and this and this and that. Again, I'm not saying I'll never listen to them, but they can't occupy the seat of instruction for me. And I want to challenge our sisters out there. We need some so-called black, because to me, and I'm going to talk about this, man, your image and archetype has almost been destroyed, largely in part to actions of yourself, but more so and mostly in part to you following the image and archetype that led you down the path of that very destruction. So in closing, I didn't mean to go this long, but it is what it is. I'm just sharing. I'm not trying to hear that right now. And I want to challenge you not to think how I'm thinking, but to consider what I'm thinking. Because image and archetype is important. And I want to hear from us. So-called black people, I want to hear from us. I don't listen to Joel Osteen, Kenneth Copeland. When it comes to the Bible, I listen to brothers who know the truth about the word of God and the language of scripture. I'm not sitting under no Caucasian pastors. And if you're doing it, you may want to think about that. I'm not sitting under no pearly things. Nothing against her, man. Do your thing, girl, sweet woman. It's not her I'm talking about. It's not the pastor who's Caucasian I'm talking about. It's the image and archetype that has been set over us for too long. And with all due respect, I want to hear from me. I want to hear my woman, the so-called black woman, at least the so-called brown. I want to hear from my man, my brothers, the so-called black men. That's what I want to hear from, as it relates to relationships, as it relates to marriage, as it relates to how we ought to live our lives. And I want you to consider, again, I'm just sharing. And I'm not saying I don't listen to anybody that's Caucasian. I'm not saying that at all. No way, of course not. But my instructor of choice, 95% of what I listen to by choice, I listen to us. Thank you for allowing me to share. A king has spoken. Take care, beloved.